Police Department is on tactical alert and in a state of partial
All right,
mobilization.
Christina, thank you. We now take you to a live press conference with the LAPD Chief, Jim McDonnell.
Communities and respond effectively to any unrest or unlawful activity. Let me explain for the public what all these means in practical terms. When we declare a tactical alert, we're activating a department-wide operational posture that enables us to reallocate officers rapidly, hold over shifts as needed, and prioritize major incidents. Officers assigned to the field remain in their areas unless they're reassigned. Activities are narrowed to police work of significance or major importance, and officers who are able to return to the field in their areas of assignment. We also notify all relevant command staff, including my office, the Office of Operations, Emergency Operations Division, in order to ensure seamless communication and coordination. In response to current events, we've also implemented partial mobilization of the department, which means we've extended watch hours, deferred days off for some personnel, and alerted off-duty officers to be ready for deployment. Our ability to scale up quickly is essential during this kind of fluid and unpredictable situation. We're deeply appreciative of the assistance we've received through the California Mutual Aid System, with officers and deputies from across Southern California already on the ground in Los Angeles supporting our efforts. We're also aware of reports that the President intends or has deployed U.S. Marines to Los Angeles. The introduction of federal military personnel without direct coordination creates logistical challenges and risks confusion during critical incidents. Los Angeles Police Department, alongside our mutual aid partners, have decades of experience managing large-scale public demonstrations, and we remain confident in our ability to be able to do so professionally and effectively. We urge full transparency and communication across all levels of government. Our priority is simple: keep both the public and law enforcement officers safe and to maintain order. To the public, we fully support your right to peacefully protest, but let me be absolutely clear. Those who choose to incite violence, engage in vandalism or graffiti, or attack officers will be arrested. There is no tolerance for criminal activity under the guise of protest. And many ask, you know, not a lot of people, relatively speaking, have been arrested during this incident. Well, I would say that I wouldn't argue with you on that, but many more will be arrested as the investigation continues. There will be many more subsequent arrests. Finally, I want to offer my deep gratitude to the men and women of the LAPD and all of our partner agencies who are out there standing side by side. They're working long hours under intense pressure, and what I've seen as professionalism, courage, and commitment to this city has never been more evident than in the past couple of days. Thank you all very much.
Buenas tardes y gracias al alcalde Bass de la ciudad de Los Ángeles.
All right, so there you have the mayor standing by as the police chief just spoke. They're talking about that tactical alert, which we told you about earlier, which means LAPD officers are being carried over on their shifts to work, what you're seeing right there in downtown LA. He also talked about the Marines being sent to Southern California and a lack of coordination with that. And what really stands out to me, Alex, too, we talked about the LAPD has decades of experience in dealing with situations like this. Now, some around the nation or President Trump may say, well, we've seen what happens in LA when there is unrest.
Yeah, look at this picture.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the thing, and that's Bass's point that she's been making. Okay, the way that you can make the point to the president that you don't need the Marines and don't need the National Guard is not have a bunch of people out there throwing rocks and glass and bringing bionic shields and putting face masks and all the rest of it. You know, because this situation in this particular area right now is not entirely under control.
But we know there's an element of that who don't care. They don't care.
Right. They don't care. And so then the question is, when do you, he said people are going to be arrested eventually, but should some of those people be arrested now?
I think that his point is members of the LAPD know the streets of LA. Right. They know the communities. They've covered riots. I mean, I've covered 2 riots myself in my decades being here in Los Angeles. So they do maybe the best that they can with the knowledge of knowing the city compared to Marines who
who have never been
some
here
they may be from Kentucky.
never been here before and have no experience doing this sort of thing, and that's not why most people sign up to be a Marine, is to do that kind of work either. And we've never seen something like that. But it is my point is that just from an optics perspective, and this is something that the mayor admitted last night to us, that it is harder to make the argument that we got everything under control when this is happening at the very same time.
Oh, no doubt. You have people watching around the country and say they see this and they think L.A. is out of control.
Right, and some of them say, thank you, President Trump, for restoring law and order,
right,
when L.A.'s, they would say Democratic politicians are not able to do that.
And they see a lawlessness that they feel is allowed to perhaps just go
and fester.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's and this isn't the first day. This is the fourth day of this sort of situation. But you see, this is the National Guard that was called in, and many of them sort of. We have not seen damage to the federal building, but they're not actively engaging with the folks there either.
There's quite a presence there at the front of the federal building. You have the National Guard and Homeland Security in the darker uniforms there. And they've been out there all day with that presence that was quite significant, with a lot of LAPD to the backside of that. Now they've moved in and cleared the crowd down away from the front of it. So it was an intimidating presence, you have to admit, in front of the federal building.
Yeah, it's you don't see anybody getting in there. That's not supposed to, and so they have protected that. The question is, will that stop everything else? Let's listen back to the chief.
So joined by Commander Ryan Whiteman, who usually works Operations South Bureau, but during this incident is the Day Watch Incident Commander. So I'll take any questions you have. If they're detailed questions, Commander Whiteman would probably be better able to answer those.
Chief, how does the mobilization that might be coming affect what you guys are trying to do on the ground, and what is your biggest concern with that?
Yeah, the mobilization is what we do internally to be able to get more officers out there. We had declared that earlier, and now we'll have the ability to have roughly 400 additional officers deployed to the field.
Are you concerned with the federal mobilization? I mean, the National Guard and the Marines possibly coming this way?
Yeah, when I look at this, and my assessment may not be accurate based on this thing's continuously churning, but I see two parallel tracks that don't work together, if you will. We're dealing with the issues on the street that you see every day. We deal with that with LAPD resources. When we need additional resources, then we reach out to the sheriff, who brings in mutual aid. We have 14 different agencies working with us for that purpose. And then only if we weren't able to continue to deal with that, needed additional help, would we reach out to the sheriff, who would then request National Guard from the governor. So that's one line. The other part then is the National Guard were federalized by the President to support federal agents who are working on behalf of ICE to do their operation. The Marines were brought in then today, evidently, to join the Army National Guard in doing what their main mission has been identified as, which is the protection of federal employees and federal property.
Do you feel that incites those? Do you feel that makes it any different on the street?
You know, I think everybody, it's a very emotional topic, absolutely. You know, could I quantify what that is? I think it has certainly heightened everybody's level of awareness and certainly anxiety, but to be able to quantify that, I wouldn't.
Chief, how are you avoiding...
We'll take two more questions and then the chief has to step out, but he'll come back.
I'll be back.
How are you avoiding less lethal weapons being used on people who are merely there in the way, potentially? Because it doesn't seem like everyone that's being hit and being attacked, including press. I don't know, like it doesn't really make any sense that people are just being shot at.
Yeah.
Can you
Sure.
explain how you minimize or at least just not do that?
Yeah, we minimize it through training, through the equipment we use. It is a target-specific munition. That's not to say that it always hits the intended target, particularly in a dynamic situation. I know that the situation you're referring to with the member of the media, we saw that. We're very concerned about that, and we're looking into that.
What about the horse trampling and the horse, the person
Yeah,
on the horse?
we're also aware of that, and we're looking at that as well.
Chief, go ahead, Jeff, go ahead, and then Mary Beth, and then he's going to come back,
If
guys.
I may. You know, all of the streets surrounding the federal building complex, Los Angeles, Temple, Aliso, Alameda, they've all been cleared. You pushed the crowd away from them.
Right.
I know you can't talk about all of your tactics, but in terms of the benchmarks that you want to hit tonight, are you moving people away from the freeway as well by clearing out those streets and moving them towards the west?
Yeah, we're trying to move them away from wherever the threat is. So if there are people assaulting officers, which is often the reason they're taking rocks or bottles or pieces of concrete, then they will attempt to disperse that crowd so that they're not enabled to continue to do that, and move them out. If they can target individuals who've been the ones who are the aggressors, who are throwing the rocks, and they can safely go in and arrest those individuals, they will. Some of those will be arrested later. After having been identified. And so this thing is moving forward in a way that some get frustrated with and watch. But we're out there, and we have an approach to this where we're not going to move a crowd into an area where it's going to cause additional problems, into the Civic Center or into the freeway. We're going to move them away where we think they can do the least damage, and we're going to try then and employ tactics that would minimize that even further.
Mary Beth, and he's
How
going to come back,
many
guys.
businesses have been damaged and looted? I know there, LAPD, one of the divisions had put out that there was some looting going on at 6th and Broadway. And as the National Guard, have they actually engaged with these protesters? Some media outlets were reporting that they were actually sending out tear gas, and I know on our channel we did not see that.
No, not that I'm aware of at all. That I'm aware of, there were at least 3 businesses that were broken into and property taken from them along Broadway and maybe other places. As far as the National Guard deploying anything other than around the federal building, I'm not aware of anything like that.
Right? Headquarters damaged, correct?
Yeah, damaged, yeah. The whole Civic Center, there was significant damage as it relates particularly to graffiti, broken windows, that kind of thing.
Chief, quick, any talk about a possible curfew at all? There had been some mention of that if things had continued. At this point, any thought of curfew?
Yeah, I know. We're always thinking about that. That's always a tool we can employ. We certainly hold that off and not wanting to do that. And this is a pretty isolated area where this is happening relative to the size of the city. So we would, if we were to use that, it would be done very judiciously.
All right, Chief, thanks.
All right. We'll be back. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, everyone. As I'm sure you are aware, there was a large protest this afternoon. Protests, and then also David Huerta, our esteemed labor leader in charge of SEIU, USWW, was released from custody this afternoon. So there was a rally around City Hall that ended up at the federal building. It was peaceful. It's my understanding that there's a few hundred individuals that are at the federal building now, but that there is no reports of violence that have taken place today or of vandalism. Of course, with the crowd just there, we will worry as it gets dark as to whether or not there are problems, but we certainly hope that there will not be. I just want to say I started off my morning with a meeting with a number of the leaders from the immigrant rights organizations. And as far as we know, right now, there have been 5 raids by ICE throughout the region. I don't know. I know of at least 1 or 2 that took place in the city, but we're still compiling that information. As you know, ICE does not tell anybody where they're going to go or when they're going to be there. But I think the thing that was most important about the meeting today was listening to the stories of the people. For example, there was a woman, a mother from Guatemala, who was looking for her husband. She wasn't able to hear about her husband and son that were detained at the Ambiance warehouse. She's not been able to locate him or to communicate with him, and for the most part, the people that have been detained have been denied access to legal representation. This is unprecedented. In the past, when there were raids, lawyers were able to go in and meet with their clients. So she's running around the area trying to find her husband, not knowing if he's here, has he been taken to another city, has he been deported out of the country. There was another statement regarding a daughter who was searching for her detained father, and at a certain point she actually saw him moving into a detention facility, but since then, as far as she knows, he has disappeared. She is not able to find out where he is. I can't emphasize enough the level of fear and terror that is in Angelenos right now, not knowing if tomorrow or tonight it might be where they live, it might be their workplace. Should you send your kids to school? Should you go to work? And you remember this from several years ago, this same type of fear that was going around. But I heard today about something that is so over the top. Can you imagine having your annual appointment to ICE, your annual appointment? You're here, you might not be a citizen, but you have papers, and you are told that you need to go to the facility to check in. And then you are detained, and you go with your family and your kids, and the whole family is detained when you were legal and you were trying to maintain your legal status. So what this means then is that people are going to be afraid to maintain their appointments, which then pushes them into the closet, and they will fall out of status and then subject to arrest. This is the kind of thing that is happening in our city right now, and I will just take you back to last Thursday. Last Thursday, there was nothing happening in this town that called for the raids that took place on Friday. Nothing was happening. Nothing warranted the raids. If you remember at the beginning of this administration, we were told that raids would be to look for violent criminals, people who had warrants. But I don't know how you go from a drug dealer to a Home Depot, to people's workplaces where they're just trying to make a living. At Home Depot, you have day laborer centers so that the people that are trying to seek work each and every day will have a place to be so that it doesn't interfere with the business. These are not the people that we were told were going to be detained. And it makes me feel like our city is actually a test case for what happens when the federal government moves in and takes the authority away from the state or away from local government. I don't think that our city should be used for an experiment to see what happens in the nation's second largest city. Well, maybe we can do this to other cities. And then I read a description of our city that was so troubling to me. A description of our city that says that we have been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals, and that now violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents. I don't know if anybody has seen that happen, but I've not seen that happen. And obviously there has been violence, and the violence is unacceptable, and we can talk about that in a minute. But to describe our city as a migrant invasion, and that we need to put an end to the migrant riots, and to call on various secretaries of the administration to go after our city because we want order to be restored, the illegals will be expelled, and Los Angeles will be set free. How is this a description? This is a despicable description of our city. Our city needs to come together now and not accept this, not allow us to be divided. We are a city of immigrants, and we have always embraced that. And if you want to hit our economy, you scare people from going to work, because you know there are sectors of our economy in this city where immigrant labor is the majority of the workforce. So this is damaging. It's damaging.
Hearing there from Mayor Karen Bass and the Chief of Police of the LAPD as we continue to watch protests in downtown LA.
That we're going to say goodbye to our viewers on Channel 13. Our coverage continues on Channel 11.
We're fortunate in our city to have a well-established institutions that promote and fight for the rights of immigrants. They have protests and rallies.
Welcome to the Fox 11 News at 6. I'm Alex Michelson. We are following breaking news coverage. More protests in downtown LA. The mayor of Los Angeles now speaking about it. Let's listen in.
Many times not even connected to the major protests, takes the opportunity to create havoc and commit vandalism. And I will tell you, it infuriated me, but it also just saddened me to drive through downtown right now and to see the level of obscene graffiti all over buildings. And I just say that anybody that does that don't come and say that you are supporting immigrant rights, the rights of immigrants. You can't possibly be supporting immigrants and vandalize our city. And understand that if you do that, and it is 100% unacceptable, you will be arrested, and it might not happen that day. So don't think because you went home that night that you are free. There's a lot of videotape, there's investigations that will take place, and you will be held accountable and frankly need to be separated from the people who are really fighting on behalf of our immigrant community. And we need to stop the raids. This should not be happening in our city. It is not warranted, and the only thing it does is contribute to chaos. This was chaos that was started at Washington, D.C. On Thursday, the city was peaceful. On Friday, it was not, because of the intervention of the federal government. And it's, again, I don't think our city should be a test case, a laboratory. With that, I'm happy to open up the questions. Whoa.
What's your reaction to the deployment of 700 Marines?
I mean, we didn't need the National Guard. Why on earth? What are they going to do? Do you know what the National Guard is doing now? They are guarding 2 buildings. They're guarding the federal building here in downtown, and they're guarding the federal building in Westwood. That's what they're doing. So they need Marines on top of it? I don't understand that. That's why I feel like we are part of an experiment that we did not ask to be a part of.
Have you been in contact with President Trump or anyone from the administration? And if you could speak to him, what would you say right now?
I would say stop the raids. Stop the raids, period. I would say give the power back to our governor. And if we need the National Guard, we can do it in the normal circumstances, which is the request is made local and the governor decides or not to grant that to our city.
And have you been in contact with the administration?
I have been in contact with the administration, not the president.
Right here in this guys, and then Robert. You touched on it lightly, but has the National Guard contributed in any meaningful way in crowd control in the past 2 years?
No. The National Guard is guarding the federal building. Now, there was an incident that I saw where there were vehicles that needed to get into the federal building, and so the National Guard cleared the area, and that's where I saw gas, that's where I saw, the flashbangs.
Mayor Bass, when it comes to the people that you're talking about right now on the streets of Los Angeles that are being looked at worldwide, what are your sources on the ground telling you in terms of, are the people there with a message regarding immigration being now outnumbered and possibly outrun by these vandals, as you're calling them?
No, I don't believe so at all. I mean, when you see their numbers, it's when everybody's left. So the crowd could be thousands. And then late at night, by the time you see their numbers, you might see 100 or so. So they're not being outnumbered. And I don't know of anybody that identifies with them. In other words, they're part of our organization or they're not. The flyer that was out for the rally on Saturday night was a flyer that had no organizational affiliation. So we don't know what it is. I mean, it could be like what happens with the illegal parties, where people, put out a word and on social media it draws a crowd.
Mayor Bass, I think a lot of people in this city agrees with you, and I'm sure appreciate you speaking up for them. I'm wondering, would it be more powerful if, they got a chance to be lawyered up, to fight back against the fact that they're being detained potentially against their violating their civil rights? Is there anything that you can talk about providing legal representation? For example, the city of LA just approved a budget with money for legal representation for immigrants. And so and that felt like an uphill battle, and more probably maybe needed. Is there anything that you can say about what can be done about, posting bail, about like...
Let me just say that the immigrant rights organizations that have existed here for a long time are providing that type of support. I cannot see a possibility of the city of Los Angeles bailing people out with city funds. Whether or not there are resources to legal services, typically what that is a contract with an organization to do that work. We have those contracts. I don't have any reason to believe that they would end.
But would it help negate what Trump is trying to do? Trying to deport people, like in a very indiscriminate fashion, seemingly.
Right. It will help to negate it when people have legal legal help. Yes?
Mayor, if I may, you talked about how you're in communication with the White House.
I was.
You were. And in terms of, the budgetary problems that you're facing, has a part of that conversation been about reimbursing the city for law enforcement overtime?
No, let me just tell you that my conversations with the administration was before the deployment of the National Guard. I was trying to make the case that the National Guard was not needed here. I was trying to make the case that if the National Guard came here, it would be a provocative move, and it would be like a deliberate attempt to create disorder and chaos in our city. It was very predictable what was going to happen here, and it was completely unnecessary. This was a solution in search of a problem, and the problem was not happening on Thursday.
We're going to go here and then we'll leave. When it comes to the solutions, the administration has claimed that there's a lack of transparency when it comes to what they know. Have you considered...
What they know? What are they looking for?
Well, there's been released information when it comes to potential ICE raids and things. When it comes to working with them, would you be considering to give them a list of the violent criminals, particularly focus on the ones who they should be focusing on?
I mean, I don't have that list, and I don't think our chief has that list. So to me, you would be talking about federal warrants, which means the federal government would have the list of violent federal criminals.
Mayor, hi. It appears that this is going to continue from all the representatives we talked to on the congressional level, 30 days. So what can then we expect, or what can you tell both the immigrant population, the city population about what...
Well, let me just say, in terms of the immigrant population and other Angelenos, I'm going to do everything I can to keep people safe. And the population of all of Los Angeles needs to know that we will stand with them. We're not going to allow our city to be divided and picked apart. And but what you also described is, who knows? Yes, maybe 30 days, maybe longer, maybe shorter. How many raids in a given day? Where are those raids going to take place? Who are they looking for? None of that is information that we know. And again, this kind of atmosphere, it creates a chaos in our city. People not sure whether they should go outside, whether they need to stay inside. We did not need this. There was nothing happening in the city that warranted what we're dealing with now.
Down in front, and then we're going to end.
Mayor, with the National Guard and now the Marines in town, is there any indication that they will take direction from your emergency management center?
They're the federal government, absolutely not. And I hear that the Marines are on the way. I don't know if they really are. I know that there was a post from the administration congratulating the National Guard for bringing peace before they even arrived. They weren't even here. But they were being congratulated for solving the problem, coming in and saving the day that didn't need saving.
How are you getting information about who is coming in? I mean, a lot of us are getting it from Twitter. Is that where you're getting your...
I'm getting it from you.
We're going to end right here.
Thank you.
Mayor Bass, I know you had mentioned that there were 5 raids in our area today and 1 in the city. Do you have any more information about, where they occurred, especially here in the city?
No, the one I know of happened to have taken place at near my grandson's school, so I know of that one. But no, I don't know.